So welcome. This is Parish and Community. We're doing interviews every week with folks in our parish and folks in the community. And our first guest is Rabbi Daniel Bogard from Central Reform Congregation, just up the street on Waterman Boulevard. So Daniel, thank you for joining me today. It's really exciting to see you.
I didn't know I was the first guest. I feel so honored.
So tell me about your role at Central Reform and how you came into it.
Sorry, you're all going to be hearing my kids in the background. I'm at home, not at Central Reform, as we all are at home. So I've got three little ones here. I grew up at CRC, as we call it. Violet, stop. Now it's the dog, sorry. Do you want me to try to move somewhere quieter, or do we want to roll with it?
Yeah.
So I grew up at CRC. It was really a formative place in my childhood. It was founded as a anti-Jewish community, sort of, or anti-institutional community, or I don't know how to say it. It was a whole bunch of hippies in the early 80s who got together, and eventually CRC, at least the CRC of my childhood, was a place sort of united by people who were committed to Tikkun Olam, to social justice. It was a home, really. It was for a long time one of the only openly accepting and embracing communities in St. Louis for queer folk, for LGBTQ community, and then also within the Jewish community in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't always such a friendly place to be an interfaith couple or an interfaith family, and we very much were started as a place that was there to serve our families and our communities and our members in a totally non-judgmental way. That the way that people choose to live their lives or raise their kids is not our business, as long as people are, doing it ethically and these sorts of things. So that's the origin of CRC, and I grew up there and really feel like sort of it formed so much of who I am and my internal sense of commitment to justice. I maybe didn't always learn as much Jewish knowledge as I would have liked at the time, but like so much more important was the values knowledge that came, right? Like the other pieces, the Hebrew can be picked up later. But it's a place that really models and lives its values, or tries to.
Well, that actually segues nicely into one of my other questions, which I saw that Tikkun Olam was a principle that is really wanted to be lived out. Can you talk a bit about how you see that, especially in the times that we're living in right now?
Yeah, should I talk a little bit about Tikkun Olam first? Is that? So there is this mystical idea within Judaism. This is only supposed to be a metaphor. No one, even the most literalists of our tradition, don't take this literally. So there's this mystical tradition known as the Lurianic myth that says that at the moment of creation, in order for there to be space where God was not, in order for there to be creation, then there had to be this contraction that happened. God had to contract God's self in order to make space for that which was not God. And so the question was asked by the mystics, by the Kabbalists in Sfat, 500 years ago, what happened to the overflow, right? Like the parts of God that used to be there. They were thinking of this in a very physical way, though I don't think any of them meant this literally at all, even then. And the answer was that there were these vessels that were created to hold the overflow, but no vessel could contain such holiness, and so they shattered and spread through the universe. And the reason humans were created was to go find the little broken pieces that still had sort of residue of divine spark within them and redeem those sparks that were still there. And so this becomes certainly a mission statement for the Jewish people, but also I would say it is the Jewish people's understanding of the mission statement for humanity, which is that we're not on this planet because the story is about us. We're on this planet because there is work to do as co-creators. That, for us, the brokenness is not about some fall from grace. It's not how we read the garden story. The brokenness is because we haven't fixed it yet. We haven't made the world as it should be yet, and that our very purpose is to do that.
This ties in quite nicely with all of the stories that we are hearing now about how racial equity in health equity is not our situation right now.
Right? Yeah, of course. I mean, our whole society, American society and St. Louis society, are divided along racialized and racist fault lines. And the structures of racism, I think, of course, when there's a pandemic, the pre-existing structures, right? It's awful. It's awful. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
awful. We do the work.
we're facing similar struggles at College Church, thinking through what is going to be our response and how are we going to really address this even more profoundly than we've ever thought we needed to address it before.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Well, we're very grateful for Central Reform Congregation and particularly your work, because you've been doing a lot to help other religious community folks that address their community online. You've been helping religious leaders figure out how to communicate. So that's one of the ways that I've connected with you. I also knew you back in Cincinnati, but thank you for the work that you've put into that. And thank you. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, who would have known that at the apocalypse, geekery and like a well-stocked collection of pajama pants were going to be just essential things here. And yet they are, right? I'm going to take the silver linings where we can find them. I've always been a geek. Yeah, always. I sat down at a computer, I remember as a 7-year-old, and just like zoomed in. I ran a bulletin board system where people would dial in before the internet was a thing. Yeah. I've just always been really geeky, and have always I've always resonated with sort of open source as a philosophy and as an approach to life, right? That this whole notion that it's free for everyone to share as long as everyone shares it. To me, that's exactly the world writ large as it should be. Yeah, related to my geekery, I was always, I feel like Star Trek: The Next Generation formed my moral character, which is a little bit of that there too. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's being able to connect. I've always believed in the power of technology to connect people. And I used to believe in it a lot more. I used to believe in a lot more than I do now. Right. I mean, I think we've all become somewhat cynical about notions of, yeah, Google's a corporation, and a huge corporation. They're not a startup committed to don't be evil. Right. And the government isn't West Wing and all these other sorts of things. Yeah. But I still do believe in the power of technology for good as much as it can be used in wrong ways. And never before has it been so essential for people to be able to connect.
Yeah.
Particularly for people who are seniors, people who are homebound, people who are disconnected, people who are not used to computers, people who are all of these sorts of things. And I actually think faith communities right now are probably more important than they've ever been. I think this is why we're here at some profound level. It's what I feel as a rabbi, certainly, that we are here to be the connection at a time when connection is so hard, to be the community when community seems impossible. And so, right now, the answer is online. And so I'm really enjoying that for about, I don't know, how long has it been? 6 weeks? For about 6 weeks, as far as I know, I have been the geek computer streaming, live streaming expert in the rabbinic world, at least. And it's really exciting to start seeing people doing things that I don't know how to do, and like that look so much prettier than what it's really, it's neat, it's gratifying. And knowing that for each of these that pops up, it's not just content online, but that it's dozens and dozens and hundreds of human beings who feel disconnected who are able to connect.
Well, we've been in the Christian community, we just celebrated Easter, and in the Jewish community, just celebrated Passover. So tell me a little bit about what the Passover experience has been like this year for you.
So I'll tell you in two totally different ways. The first thing to say for people who aren't as familiar with Passover is that I think Passover's closest analog is probably Thanksgiving. Not in the content sense of it, but in the lived observance sense, in that Passover is something that you do with family around a table with a meal. It's not something that you do in a synagogue. So there are synagogue like special prayers and things like that. Very few people go to them, and it's not, my shul doesn't even generally offer those special things, right? Like, and so that was a challenge. How to replicate that sense of being around family when you can't be around family. So for the first night, what we did is we have 5 rabbis at Central Reform Congregation. Only one of us really works truly full-time, or at least only one of us was paid to work full-time. But we have 5 rabbis who people relate to as rabbis and have known as their rabbis, everyone but my wife and myself, for at least 20 years or so. And so what we did was we created a Passover Seder where we had all of the different rabbis record the little pieces of the Passover Seder. And I watched a 15-minute video on how to use Adobe Premiere Pro on YouTube. And I put together a video, which is amazing what you can do in 15 minutes with YouTube, right? Like, so that was a lot of fun and goofy. And I think for a lot of people, gave them a sense of Passover. There were the goofy moments, there were the funny moments, there were the serious moments, there were the, so that was the goal there. And that was really for people either to sit around if they're pandemic residing, socially isolating, that's a nicer way, socially distancing, whatever we say, with another group of people. They could put it on and like that could be the Seder, so they didn't have to worry about it. And for people who are socially distancing alone, it was a real way, hopefully, particularly with 5 of us on there, to like feel the sense of connection and community. And so that was what we did as a congregation. But actually as a family, we did a Zoom Seder. I mean, way cut back on the liturgy and things like that of it. And it was actually kind of amazing because one of the things we realized is like years ago, we should have put up a computer and opened up Zoom, and anyone who wasn't home should have been like right there at the Seder with us. And I'm sure that'll be what the future is, because I did Seder with cousins that I haven't seen in 20 years. And we shared stories about, Seders as kids together. And it was not the same. And there were parts that were just so wonderful and so much better than what would have happened if we could have been together. So
that's really sweet.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other, the good thing too about having these types of experiences online, maybe not with your cousins because that's more of a family thing, but I was able to watch some of the virtual Passover that was put together by Central Reform, and so that,
cool.
And I think that we're experiencing that at College Church too, is that we get to have people dropping in on things and get a sense of us without being in person with us. So I really appreciate it.
Right, this whole flattening of distance is so odd. I see my beloved former congregants from Peoria and Cincinnati, they're coming to services, they're in the Zoom class, they're it's no different than
right there with you.
I almost started crying the first time I saw some of my Peoria folks in a Zoom class. It was
Yeah, that's so sweet. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciated. I wish you all of the best as you continue to connect with your congregation and all of those far-flung in your life.
Now, your community is Episcopal?
Catholic.
Catholic. Okay, excuse me.
Yeah. So we're just down, where exactly is Central? Waterman is a Central West End, correct?
Yeah. We are just north of Barnes off of Kings Highway. We're at the corner of Kings Highway and Waterman.
Okay.
Just south, as our many of our St. Louisans know the importance of this and the sort of awful racist history of this. We are just south of Del Mar, which has been classically the racist dividing line of St. Louis.
Right. And we're at Grand and Lindell, so we're right next door to St. Louis University, on St. Louis University's campus. So, yeah, we shall have to arrange a visit when we are able to visit again.
And do some work together, and yeah. Can I give a book plug that relates to all of this?
Please do.
I'm in the middle of, I should have remembered the name of the book before I told you. The Broken Heart of America, maybe? Heart of America, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, The Broken Heart of America, St. Louis and the Violent History of the United States.
Oh, fantastic. Yes.
Written by a Harvard professor who grew up, 2 hours away from St. Louis. And is sort of a, what's that famous Howard Zinn history book, People's History of the United States. It's kind of a history of St. Louis told that way. And it's incredibly powerful to sort of center the experience of racism and to see how St. Louis has in many ways been the central point, the fulcrum point of American racism.
Wow.
Even like, I didn't know that the campaigns against Native peoples, the sort of imperial wars, they were all launched out of St. Louis.
Yeah.
That's what built St. Louis.
And the way that city planning, urban planning happened, that has a St. Louis connection as well. That's we have a lot of work to do to heal the world, Daniel. Let's get at it. All right.
Good to see you. Take care of yourself.
All right.